So, what if you weren't created to just settle? What if you were created to grow, to expand, to create, to even co labor with God in a life full of meaning? Even now, in midlife, you are not done yet, my friend. In fact, you might just be getting started. Hey, friends, and welcome to Taking Back Happy. Today, we're going to look at growth and creation. So, three different areas we're going to hone in on. The first one is we are actually wired for both growth and creation. The second one is growth without creation can either lead to pride or frustration. And then the third one is creating a life that leaves a legacy is really what we're going for here. It's not just growth for growth's sake. It's growth with a purpose in mind, something we can pass on to our kids, our grandkids, even other women that we want to encourage and bless along the way. So, how do we know that we're wired for growth and creation? Well, if we look back even from the very beginning, God created us not only in His image, but also with His nature. And God is the ultimate creator. So that means we are co-creators with Him. A lot of times we think if we are co-creators with God that we're going to be doing something like within the church or within the mission field or some kind of like religious area. But that's not necessarily the truth. Anytime that we're doing anything in our lives, we can be a co-creator with God, whether it's building a family, whether it's building a strong marriage, a business, a friendship, a ministry, even like a garden or something like that we are literally building and creating. I just graduated with my master's in life coaching. So it was a life coaching program that I did last year, and it was a basic certification. And this year I did the master program, and it was really, really amazing. And when I think about building that business and helping so many women and changing the lives of other people, just like it's changed my life, I realize that I'm actually co-creating with God. I'm depending on Him. I'm learning all the things. I'm doing all the work. I'm showing up strong. But I'm also very dependent on Him. I'm dependent on Him for clarity and for wisdom and just even for hope and sometimes even strategies, like where should I start? How should I do this thing? But before I even entered the realm of life coaching, I already was doing a coaching in a way, a wellness coaching. And that was something that was just really important to me, is like wellness and like exercise and like getting chemicals out of my home and taking supplements and doing all the things so I can show up in a healthy way as I age. A few years ago, I was planning out some classes for the upcoming year, and we would do that. I'd meet up with other ladies who were also selling the wellness products and doing different classes and little DIYs and things like that. But I was really just praying, like, what can I do this year that's really going to make an impact, that's really going to help the lives of the women that I'm seeking the help. And I just felt like the Lord just showed me to start having these classes in my home. And they were not just wellness classes. They were definitely wellness classes as far as like topical things each month. It might be something that helps with your memory. It might be something that helps with moving your body. It might be something that's a certain supplement, whatever it is. But also for just building that community and having people over. And He just gave me this idea to have what I call Thursday Night Ignite, or TNI. And we just get together and we have dinner, we hang out, we learn a few things, and then we just fellowship. And it's just such a nurturing night. It's such a nurturing time, and I just enjoy it so much. And I definitely feel like that was just a God idea when I went to Him and I was like, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I want to do. And I felt like He just really led me in that. We were co-creators with that. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works." And I think that's how all just comes together when we're looking at creating. And we grow and then we create. We grow, then we create. And what I like the most is growing doesn't have to stop. at a certain age. I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s. No, you don't have to stop creating. That's not something that you do just when you're young. In fact, spiritual and emotional growth often deepen in midlife. And, you're just in a different place. A lot of times your kids are grown up, they're on their own, they're doing their thing, and you have different opportunities and way that you spend your time. And it's from that really deep place that we can create. It's pretty easy to see how we really are wired to create. But what about when we're growing and we're learning? Like, I love, homeschool mom nerd here. I love being a lifelong learner. And a lot of times I just like to learn, and I like to watch podcasts, and I do lots of training through Life Mentoring School. And I listen to all different things to try to, grow in my mindset and grow in my life coaching and grow in my wellness and all those different things. But one thing that really stood out to me, I was at a conference this last weekend and I was listening to Angela Jowers. And one of the things that she said was, if we are growing, we need to be creating, or we can get prideful. And that just really hit me like a ton of bricks. If we're constantly learning, but we're not actually putting any of the things into action, there's a good possibility that we're going to kind of get puffed up. We're going to be kind of like a know-it-all at that point. Nobody likes a know-it-all. And then I kind of picture like a pipe, like, we're a vessel and we learn things and then we create things and we bless other people. And if we're just like constantly learning things, but we're not ever putting things out into the world, it's like we have like a backed up drain. We have a drain that's just full of things. In this case, it's good things, but it needs to be like flowing through. It needs to be flowing through us. We need to be creating. 2 Peter 1:3 says, His divine power has given us everything we need for life and godliness. We can think about it as like a fork in the road. As we grow in knowledge and experience and insight, there's like a little fork in the road, and we can either channel it into creating and giving back and changing lives, or we can fall into pride and comparison and stagnation. I don't know about you, but I choose to be giving it away. When I was at my graduation this previous weekend and like the life coach training, and there were several life coaches that are part of like the leadership team for a Life Mentoring School. And they were just like pouring their hearts out to us all weekend. They were teaching us, they were training us, they were taking pictures, they were encouraging us. They were anything you can think of, they were doing. They were setting up, they were tearing down, they were doing meals. Like, it was like service, service, service. And it was so encouraging, and it was kind of like spread like wildfire. When you see other people serving, it just makes you want to serve in that same way. When you see them showing up in such a big, wonderful way, it makes you want to do the same thing. Ultimately, we want to use the gifts that God has given us to bless others. We're actually a steward of our own gifts, of our wisdom, even our story, our healing. All those things can be an encouragement and a blessing to others. So if you have the opportunity to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. I love that song. But it also just reminds us that when we have that fork in the road, we are going to turn a hard right for creation as opposed to getting hung up in pride and frustration. So we realize we're wired for growth and creation. We realize we're going to get to that fork in the road and we're going to choose creation. But lastly, we're going to look at even a bigger picture, just like a bird's eye view of our life, and how creating a life that leaves a legacy is what our ultimate goal is. When we think of creation, a lot of times, at least I do, think of like being artistic or like building something or creating something from the ground up. But that's not necessarily what we're looking at here. We're looking at creation as far as being totally intentional in our lives, being present, showing up for ourselves and showing up for others. What if we could create like peace in our home, or a habit of prayer, or a space for joy to play with our grandchildren? What if we could create a business or a ministry that reflects our very own story and even God's story in and through our lives? Legacy is something that we build. We build it now, and then it becomes like the memory, like the culture, the spiritual heritage of our family. I think about when my kids were growing up, we always did family fun night. So every Friday night, we would get a whole bunch of sleeping bags out, and we'd pile them up in the living room, and we would watch movies and eat popcorn and hang out. And then we would actually just sleep on the floor in the living room overnight. And the kids just love that. They look forward to that every single week. And that was just kind of part of our family identity when they were little. What's really cool is my son does something very similar to that right now. So he'll build like a fort in the living room, and he and his son will watch movies together. Or sometimes he'll even watch a ball game on one TV, and right next to him, he'll have a little TV for his son to watch, like Bluey or Blue's Clues or something that he enjoys. So they're spending the time together, and they're in this little fort, and they have all the stuffed animals, and they have, their little sippy cups and things like that. It's just so sweet. But we can think of legacy as like planting seeds. We're planting seeds now that are going to bear fruit when we're gone, and we're passing them on from generation to generation. Do you have any memories when you were growing up? Were there any certain things that you would say, this is an identity, or this is something that was special to my family? I remember when we were growing up, we would have Sunday dinners with my grandparents. That was always fun. But the thing that stands out to me the most was snow days. Snow days were the absolute best days of all days, ever days. So when I think about my childhood, that is definitely one of my fondest memories, because we would get up in the morning and we'd wait and see if our school was out. Our school was always the last to get out. But whenever we heard that, my brother and I were like, yay, we're out. And we would get all bundled up and go outside and play in the snow and get freezing cold and come back in, put our stuff in the dryer. My mom would always bake goodies with us. And so we would bake these things. I think they're really called pinwheels, but we called them dodos. And so we would bake those, or we'd bake cookies, and we would just, eat these treats, and then we'd bundle back up and go back outside and play again. It was absolutely the best. Another thing that was just so sweet was every night when I would go to bed, my dad would come in and he would say the same little thing every single night. So he'd come in and he'd say, good night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite, sleep well. And so it was just our little tradition. I knew every night he was going to come in and say that. He did it when I was a little kid. He even continued to do it until I tolerated it as a teenager. Just as a side note, I will say, as women, sometimes we struggle with this. So we struggle with, especially when our kids are younger, being away from our kids. Or even as we get older and our kids are grown up, we struggle with maybe not, babysitting our grandchildren, or maybe not being as involved in their lives as we think we should. But whenever we are creating, we are leaving a legacy. We're leaving an example for them to follow. We're leaving something that says, there was more to mom than just being a mom, and that's what I'm so excited about this podcast about, because for years, I always thought my best days were behind me, and just to have the possibility that our best days are actually in front of us, and to be living it out and showing our kids by example, grown kids especially, is just such a blessing to me. So my friends, I just want to encourage you. I want to let you know that God is not finished with you. You were created to grow deeper, wider, stronger. And then out of that growth, you were meant to create. Not like trying to prove something or perform or, try to get kudos from people around you, but just for his purpose in your life, for his glory, for the joy that you're going to pass on to your family as they follow behind you. So my Taking Back Happy friends, I want to challenge you again. This time I want to invite you to share how you are actually creating a legacy in your own life. And just put the hashtag Taking Back Happy. and just tag me. I want to hear all the things you're doing, and we can share, we can pass these things on to each other. If you're not in my Facebook group, Taking Back Happy Facebook group, that's a great place to get in and share with your other friends in there, because we all want to grow and create together.